Hello everyone, this is Anna from Minerva, and today we're going to sew along to McCalls M6891 dress pattern. It's a beautiful garment with a collar, semi-fitted bodice and a narrow hem. The dress I'm wearing right now has short sleeves. It's made out of a beautiful linen and cotton Liberty fabric, and that's exactly what we're going to sew today. I'll share some of the tips and tricks that will allow you to achieve a neat finish and also figure out any of the tricky parts. All of our products, as I mentioned, are tagged down below, and as always, if you like any of them, you can save them to your favorites. You can also create a free account on Minerva and we'll send you a discount coupon to use with your next order. So let's get started. So I gathered all of the supplies that we'll need today. Here is the pattern. It comes in 4 designs, and that's the option we're going to use, the one with a belt and short sleeves. I'll use some of these beautiful hemline pearly yellow buttons that come in a plastic box that you can later repurpose for something else. We also need a matching thread and some iron-on lightweight interfacing. And finally, the fabric. It's a very beautiful Liberty's cotton and linen blend. It's quite lightweight but not see-through, so it's perfect for a summer dress with no lining. It has a wonderful delicate floral print that will complement the design of the dress. We'll start with what details you need to cut out for the view C of the dress. These are the sleeves, and you can see that I've already marked all of the seam allowances. We also need the bodice pieces. I marked all of the dots too. 4 details of the pockets, 2 pieces of the belts, the back piece that's been cut on the fold, 2 interfaced collar pieces. I'll attach the interfacing to the other piece later on, 2 details of the facing. I already interfaced mine, 2 skirt front pieces. I also already interfaced the pocket openings with a small line of interfacing that will help to keep their shape. 2 skirt back pieces, also with interfaced pocket openings. We'll start with sewing the darts on the front bodice pieces. We need to fold the darts and sew them from bottom to top. And then we'll do exactly the same on the back bodice piece. So I finished and pressed the seams on the front and the back. You can see they're facing each other. And I also e-stitched the shoulder on the back bodice piece. Now I'm going to attach the bodice pieces at the side seams and the shoulders as well. I finished the shoulder and side seams, and before we carry on, I'll show you how to finish the seams. There are different ways you can finish them, with a serger or with a zigzag stitch, but considering that this dress doesn't have a lining, I would like to achieve a very neat finish. I'll show you different techniques that will help you to achieve this goal. For these seams, I'm going to use a bias tape that I made myself. You can use a thin cotton wool. It's better not to use the main fabric because it's a bit thick for it. You can obviously use a ready-made bias tape. I prefer to make it myself so I can be sure that it wouldn't shrink, and I think the quality is much better this way too. In order to make it, you need to cut some 4 or 5 cm width strips of fabric at a 45-degree angle. You can do it with a rotary cutter or simply mark your bias tape directly on a fabric with a ruler. To connect the strips, you put them like this and sew them together at an angle. This way you wouldn't have any bulk compared to connecting them in a straight line. And then you just cut it off and press it open. Here I have an already pressed one. In order to press it, you can either use a special device or simply fold it in half and press, then open it up, fold one side to the center fold and press, and repeat it with the other side. To attach the bias tape, you can simply wrap it around the seam, pin it in place and stitch, but that way there is a chance that you wouldn't catch both sides. It's better to attach one side first. To do that, you'll need to open it up, align the edges, pin it in place, and then stitch along the fold. Now we'll trim it a bit and fold it, making sure that you cover the stitch that we've just made. That's it. This side is done now. I just need to press it. And remember that this side is going to be seen, not the back one. That's why we attach the bias tape to the back first, so then the front one is nice and neat. Now I'll just repeat it with this side, the other shoulder and the side seams. So I finished the seams with bias tape, pressed them, and that's how they turned out. Now we'll work on the sleeves. I've already attached the E-stitches, and I must say that I needed longer ones than what was marked on the pattern. We'll start with a side seam. We'll stitch it and then, just like in the previous step, cover both seam allowances with a bias tape. So here is what I've done. I attach the bias tape and press the seam. Now we'll need to finish the hem. First, we'll just fold it once and then press it again, pin it in place and top stitch. Now we're going to attach the sleeve to the bodice, and I'm going to use a French seam for it. The sleeve is already completely finished, the side seam and the hem, and we're going to find the shoulder seam and match it with the top marking on the sleeve, wrong sides together. And now we're going to do the same with the side seams. And then we're going to pin it all around. And now I'm going to ease this area and also pin it in place, and then stitch about 8 mm away from the edge. That's how it looks. So I made the first row of stitching, and now I'm going to trim the seam allowance quite a bit because we're going to turn it inside out. Now we're going to go to the inside, match the seam allowances and pin it like this all around and stitch it. finished this seam, you can see that the seam allowance is all enclosed and it's nice and neat on the right side. There are no folds or wrinkles. Now we're going to work on the skirt. I have the front part here, the back part and the pockets. We'll start with pinning one pocket detail to the skirt piece, right sides together. We're going to sew it until about 1.5 centimeters away from the edge, which is where the seam allowance is. And we'll do exactly the same on the other skirt detail. Pin it and stitch 1.5 centimeters away from the edge of the pocket. Once we finish stitching, we'll press it on the pocket side. So I've attached the pocket pieces to the skirt ones, and now I'm going to put them together, match and sew it from the top till the marking. Reverse and then start another line of stitching from the second marking all the way to the bottom of the skirt. So I've sewn at the top till the marking and below till the bottom of the skirt. And at the back part I've clipped the seam allowance of a pocket, only at the back. Now we're going to sew the pocket. There are different ways of how it can be done. You can simply sew it all around and finish with a zigzag stitch or a serger, or you can use a bias tape, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pin it all around, and considering that I still have this edge of a seam allowance at the back free, thanks to clipping it, I'll be able to do it all the way around. So I finished pinning the first side of the bias tape. I finished the pocket, and now we're going to pin the edge of the pocket to the skirt seam allowance, then flip it to the other side, and because we clipped the seam allowance at the back part of the pocket, we can do it. And now we're going to attach the bias tape to the skirt seam allowances all the way till the edge. and on another one we'll be able to catch the loose pocket seam allowance. So I finished all the seams. And I also stitched over here. The stitch attaches this part of the pocket to the skirt seam allowance. And then also a bit here. Now we're going to flip it to the right side and secure the pocket entrance at the top and bottom. I've made the center back seam using a French seam method, and that's how the finished pocket looks. Everything is secured. So now I already pinned the top of the pocket so we can attach the bodice to the skirt. We'll start by matching the edges. Seams. The center with the back. It's easy because you have a seam there, but on the bodice you can mark where the fold was. Again, these side seams. And the edges. Now we need to pin the whole area everywhere. But first, I would like to give you a small tip on how to match the side seams perfectly. What I like to do is to hand pass it in place. I find these seams, match them and secure with some hand stitches. As I do it, I constantly check to make sure they match. That way, when you stitch on the machine, the fabric wouldn't move, which is possible if you just pin it. Now I'll do the same with the second side seam, then pin it all around, stitch on the machine, press the seams open and finish each one with a bias tape. Now let's move on to the collar and facings. I already attached the bias tape on the inner side of the facing pieces and I clipped those corners. Now we'll take the facing pieces and pin them like this, and then match the marking and edge. we'll stitch this horizontal stitch from the edge to the clipped corner, then stop and backstitch. After that, we'll go from the clipped corner to the right, like this, without going over the seam allowance. As for the main fabric, we'll also clip the corners and match the shoulder seams with the markings, and then the clipped corners with the corners of the collar, and then carry on pinning it till the marking here. And we'll stitch without going over the seam allowance. I've attached the collar and already clipped the curve. As you can see, I stitched it all the way to the clipped corner and then I stopped. And now I'll turn the detail and carry on pinning the leftover part. I'll stitch from the clipped corner till the marking without going over the seam allowance. And I'll repeat it the same way here. It's much easier to do it in 2 steps like this. As for the facing, I attached it first like this, and then another stitch is from here to here, obviously reinforcing this area. Because of this 2-step process, the corner is quite nice and sharp. I'm still going to press it, but you can already see it. I trimmed the seam allowances a bit and now I'm going to press them open. So I completely attached the collar to the bodice and ironed the seam allowances up. Now we'll take the facing and match the corners of the collar. We're going to pin the collar, but only the upper edge. Then we're going to stitch here from one corner to another without stitching over the seam allowances. And then we're going to trim it down and separately sew here from the corner to the corner, again without stitching over the seam allowances. And then with a separate stitch from here to here and then all the way down to the hem. But first of all, we'll start with this step. So I stitched the collar. I started 1.5 centimeter away from the edge to 1.5 centimeter away from the other edge. I trimmed the seam allowances and I'll also grade them because one of them should be a bit shorter than the other when it comes to the collar. And now I'm going to stitch here. I'll start exactly at the corner point where the stitch ends and go up till the collar stitch we just made without going over the seam allowance to create that nice sharp corner. I've already pinned it here and it can go over the seam allowance. Here is the stitch. I already trimmed the seam allowances. And now we have this last step. We're going to start here at the very end of this stitch, then we'll sew from here, stop, lift up the machine foot with the needle down, turn the garment and carry on stitching all the way down. So I turned the collar inside out, pressed it, and now I'm going to finish the leftover upper part. I attach the sides to the shoulder seams with pins. I already clipped the seam allowance, and now I'm going to secure the collar in place with some hand basting, so it's easier for me to slip stitch it. I also marked the fold with a contrast thread, so it's easier for me to attach it. Because the dress has a half circle skirt, I highly recommend to let it drop before you hem it. To do that, you simply need to hang the dress on a body form or clothes hanger overnight before you hem it and then cut the excess. Because of that, now my facing doesn't match the edge of the skirt perfectly, but it's okay. I marked a new seam allowance line here. Now I'm going to stitch from here all the way to the edge and then reinforce it. Now I'm going to trim the seam allowance. That's how it's going to look. Now we can start working on the hem. For that, we would first fold it like this, and then either just press it and hand bast it, and then fold it over again, pin or hand bast and stitch in place. Now I top stitch the collar and I also fixed in place all of the seams inside. For example, here. I simply used a couple of hand stitches to bast two seam allowances together so they always lay flat. Now we're going to start marking the buttonholes. To do that, we'll take the pattern and see where the first one is. You should also try the dress on first to see if the button lays on the fullest point of your bust, because that's exactly where it should be. If it doesn't, you would have to relocate it and all the other buttons accordingly too. So we mark the first button, and from there you can either still use the pattern to trace them or simply measure the distance between the buttons and from the edge to know where to locate them. I like to mark mine with contrast thread. You can use a chalk or any other desired method. So I marked all of the buttonholes here, and now I'm going to stitch them on a machine and cut them. And the final step is to attach the buttons. All what's left to do is the belt. We'll start with a side seam. I stitch the central seam and press it open, and now we're going to sew this seam. We're going to start with pinning the center and then we'll pin all of that. We'll sew all the way here, but then we'll leave a small opening so we can turn it inside out. So we'll sew it till here, reverse, start a new stitch somewhere here, reverse and stitch all the way to the end. And then we'll be able to turn it inside out. I stitched the belt, turned it inside out, and then I top stitched it, which allowed me to also close the opening. I top stitched it on both sides all around so it has a bit more structure. I hope you enjoyed our sew along. If you have any questions, please leave them down below and we'll get back to you. Don't forget to follow Minerva for more videos. The follow button is just above this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!